Coming up on Artifacts, Video on the Verge is the theme of the 9th Annual Twin Cities Video Festival. You'll find out all about this gala event.
And we're going to be talking with dancer Beth Corning. We're going to have Lendre Kearns from the Guthrie Theater and some guests from Very Special Arts Minnesota.
We've also got a great Arts Question Prize giveaway later in the show.
So stay with us for Artifacts. We also want to let you know that we're going to have a new time slot on Regional Channel 6. That's the Metro Cable Network, 10 o'clock Thursday evening. So stay tuned for us there. We'll be at our regular time on Minneapolis City Cable 34 all through the week.
And now, before we meet our first guests, we'll set the stage for Video on the Verge with a short clip from a show that was a winner in last year's Twin Cities Video Festival. This piece was for Wilson's The Leather Experts, and it was produced by Dave Coleman of Aria Productions. Chris Jones was the writer.
What are you looking for today?
What kind of leather is this? Is it hard to take care of? And where is it made? I prefer made in America if you got it. What would happen if I got it wet? Do I just toss it in the dryer? Can I store it in a plastic bag when I'm not wearing it? Well, help. I just want some answers.
First day? To be a successful sales associate, you need to know your product inside and out. As part of the Wilson's customer satisfaction team, it's your job to help the customer make an informed decision. Follow me. Not that way, the other way.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm Janet Zahn with the Office of Film, Video, and Recording for the City of Minneapolis. And with me today are John Prin and Tom Williams with CME Video and Film. Both are producers. John is also the chair of this year's ITVA Twin Cities Video Festival. And Tom enters this festival with oftentimes wins in the festival, he and his company. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
You've got an exciting event coming up.
Yes.
But before we talk about that event, I think people are going to be kind of curious about what this ITVA is, or International Television Association is, and people that are in this organization, what they do, and both of you obviously can talk to that.
Sure. We are in the non-broadcast video business. Myself, video is television, so I think of myself in the television business, therefore, International Television Association. And we are a very active chapter of 110 nationally, and I myself am a freelance producer of human issues programs, and a director, producer, and a writer.
Tom, tell us a little bit about what you do.
I run a company called CME Video and Film, which is a full-service production company and a subsidiary of the CME KHBB advertising agency in downtown Minneapolis. The way I describe what we do is that we produce programs that organizations use to motivate, train, and communicate with their employees and customers.
And you both have been in the business for a while.
Yes.
As an independent. Give me an example of some of your clients. Who do you do this work for?
Recent clients have been the Minnesota Department of Human Services, the Child Adoption Unit. Did a very large project there to help the 87 counties in Minnesota match the children who are waiting to be adopted with parents who are waiting to adopt. I've done a project on family violence and what safe choices children can make, and that's a cartoon, animated Disney type of project.
Oh, fun.
Did a documentary last year on the disabled and how the agency that I worked for called Partnership Resources in Hennepin County takes the individual who's disabled from the institution where they languish and gets them mainstreamed into society and functioning as a worker and living on their own and taking their own transportation to and from. So those are the kinds of projects that I've worked on recently.
Tom?
We've been in business about 20 years and have some relationships that go back about that far. We tend to work for larger organizations. Recent projects we've done have been for Mayo Clinic, Lutheran Brotherhood, Anderson Windows. Our niche tends to be, although we do a great deal of training, we do tend to have a real specialty in sales and marketing. Much of the programs that we do are designed to be shown to or used by salespeople in one way or another.
You brought along a piece today. I think that might be a nice lead into showing that clip. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This is a program that one of our producers, Tom Bloom, wrote, produced, and directed. It was for Anderson Windows to be used at point of sale. It is shown to people who are about to embark on building a new home or remodeling project to show them a little bit of what Anderson Windows is all about.
Was it entered in ITVA Festival?
Yes, it was, and won an award. I believe it was last year.
Okay.
Great. Roll the clip, please.
The Anderson difference. It's a look that pleases the eye, a feel that satisfies the touch, the comfort from unmatched performance, and the confidence that comes with peace of mind. The Anderson difference, uniting beauty and design with unsurpassed performance. In a world of mediocrity, fortunately, there exists a place where perfection is the guiding force. A place where pride in craftsmanship and style are the rule, where quality windows are the reward. That place is Anderson. Anderson windows provide a look that's bright, comfortable, and inviting. They're a source of natural light and gentle breezes. Anderson windows invite the light into any home and furnish it with a greater sense of spaciousness. They reward a room with a look that produces an appealing living area and a pleasant workspace. The Anderson difference means paying attention to every detail. Materials are specially selected to reach the perfect blend of style and performance. Because when it comes to your home, it pays to do things right.
Well, that's a very nice example of
Nice
some
piece.
Thank you.
good work. Now that looks like it was shot in a beautiful home on a nice summer day, but in fact it wasn't.
No, it was shot during our big Halloween blizzard, as I recall, in a studio with great big transparencies as the backdrops. Our director of photography on that was Greg Stever, who John has worked with as well, very talented guy. Original music was done by the tracking station on that piece.
Very nice work.
Yes.
Well, tell me a little bit about the industry in the Twin Cities. Is it growing? Is it solid? What's your vision
I think it's
here?
growing. I know that my business has just taken off, and the quality of projects has improved, meaning the subject matter is, I think, in my case, human issues, mainly involving children and families. Society issues, and I just have been very happy. And I find that, excuse me, on a level of technology and state-of-the-art equipment and all of that we have it here. Also, of course, we've got a booming movie industry here, thanks to the Minnesota Film Board and IFP North and other organizations. So we've had many fine productions shot here lately, and we have a whole system of camera people, sound people, grips, and all of that that are doing a phenomenal job. So if somebody's busy, there's depth. I call it depth on the bench. I think we have a real good bench here in Minneapolis, and a very active market.
Tom, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the trends in the industry. There's a lot of new stuff happening, which is actually why we are calling this festival Video on the Verge. That's right. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Well, what everybody's excited about these days is multimedia, the marriage of computers and video technology. It is very much a fledgling industry right now. There are technical challenges to be overcome. There are different formats and standards out there that are beginning to wrestle a little bit for supremacy. But I think we all understand that the days of producing a linear video, which is shown on a cassette, I shouldn't say it's limited because there's some years to go, but I think what multimedia will do for the industry is what 3/4-inch cassettes did when, 1972 or something. They really created an industry because suddenly you could walk into somebody's office with a cassette in your hand and show them a movie. Thus was an industry born. And I think the same thing is going to happen when you can walk in with a disc or send them data over the phone line.
I think another thing that's happening as a trend is people can interact with the media. They can push for a choice. Does he go down that corridor, or does he take a left and go down that corridor? And that was largely been missing. Yeah, I do think, however, that people will still want to just sit back and say, "Tell me a story." just give it to me, you know. And I don't want to interact. I just want to be, you know, fed the images and so on. So I think there's room for both. But with multimedia, interactive, people being able to punch in their own choices. We're seeing this in the area of sales, retail sales right now. I think we'll be seeing more of it, especially in the educational area.
Sure.
Where kids or even, well, training, I'm sure you're seeing interactive going on quite a bit. So I think it's a big trend.
I think John is right, though, too, that there are certain skills that are always going to be applicable. I got into this business from the theater business and found that my directing and playwriting skills were very transferable because, as John says, it's often about telling stories. And I don't think that's going to change. So I don't think video professionals around town are worried that they're going to become obsolete. I think there's simply going to be new avenues of distribution for programs that there weren't before.
And on the distribution angle, there's 500 channels. We're going to have 500 choices to make about what program we watch. You know, the old days of ABC, NBC, and CBS is gone. I mean, that's been gone for quite a while, but it's really going to multiply compared to what we have now. So. More and more people are going to be on that remote, click, 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 and that's going to create a culture.
That's going to really be
That's actually interactive right there.
Sure, sure. So we, in fact, do have Video on the Verge, and we have a festival that's going to be celebrating the work that's been done over the past year locally. It's the only awards show that celebrates this kind of thing. Tell us about it, John.
Sure. And I think one thing we're doing is we're moving it from the December date to the April time frame to coincide with the Academy Awards. And this is our Academy Awards. This is a gala thing. You know, we're at the Hilton Hotel. We're in the main ballroom. We're going to have, you know, lots of monitors and things going on. We're going to have there's going to be a sense of real excitement, and it's going to be very gala, very upscale, fun event. And we encourage anybody, a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend, to come. The Verge aspect in our theme this year, Video on the Verge, is we are on the verge of all these trends, and we're in the middle of them right now. And so there's going to be a real sense of things going on all the time. And but of course, what it's really for is to recognize the work of a producer like Tom, or the many other very good producers that are in town, and who Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the general area, who are doing work in documentary. There's a special budget category, so if you've done a very low budget production, you can enter that. There's the sales and marketing, you know, categories, both in product and service. There's PR, there's PSA, public relations, and there's PSAs, public service announcements. We have educational and training. We have a lot of categories that people can enter. So
and it is a really fun event, and I encourage also people who are watching, if you're curious about it, there's a hotline number that you can call, 927-8747, to find out more about the festival. I know we haven't given date and time.
Right. April 9th, Saturday night, Hilton Hotel, time 6 o'clock. Come, network with all your friends, buzz with everybody in the biz, and at 8 o'clock our show goes on. The show will not last longer than 2 hours, so it won't be a long, dragged-out affair. Promise. You can hold me to that.
Yeah. Johnny Carson said today he would not, I read today that he was not going to host the Academy Awards because it's too long. So he could, in effect, do this show.
He could be our MC.
We should give him a call.
Yeah, we should give him a call.
Well, I appreciate both of you coming today to talk about the festival and the work that you do and the industry in which you work. It's been a pleasure having you here, and I hope you folks will consider going to the festival. It really is a fun thing, and especially if you're not familiar with the industry. It's a good way to take a look at what's going on in the Twin Cities.
Everybody's welcome. April 9th, Saturday night, Hilton, Minneapolis Ballroom.
Great. Still to come on Artifacts, Phill Lindsay will be talking with dancer Beth Koenig, and Lendre Kearns, the communications director from the Guthrie, will also be here, and you'll also meet some folks from Very Special Arts Minnesota. Stay tuned.
And that was a look at a little clip that our crew did while they were taping or filming, I should say, the Mighty Ducks 2 movie, which is going to open up soon. And if you want information about Mighty Ducks 2, call the Minnesota Film Board hotline. We'll get that number up on the screen. And now my guest here is somebody that I got to see just dance a little bit last fall, and I'm very excited to have her here. This is somebody I think is special, not only because of her dance, but this winter when it was so cold here, she actually went to Stockholm, Sweden, just to warm up. Beth Corning, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And you really did do that, but not just to warm up.
No, I didn't just go to warm up.
You're well known in Europe and in Sweden.
In Scandinavia, yeah.
Yeah. Now, where did you start your career?
I started in the States. I mean, I started dancing when I was little, and I actually worked here. And in 1981, I went to Stockholm, not knowing there was any dance there. And I went because I was married at the time, and my husband was going. So, dutiful wife, I followed after. And within 6 months, I was being produced in major theaters. I mean, big fish, small pond, right place, right time.
Well, that works, but you must have had some talent that they recognized that, hey,
I
would...
I was also American.
And you were American, and that was popular, or is popular in that part of...
Yeah, it unfortunately, in many ways, it is a real in some respects.
That's interesting.
I think now it has gotten much better that you are no longer just idolized because you are American. I mean, you do have to have some sort of talent now. But for a while, I mean, I used to watch some people come in and I would go, you know, there's no way in hell that these people would be recognized in the States.
And then they are sort of representing the U.S.
Yeah.
to your European
Right.
friends and colleagues
Right.
there. And it was in Stockholm, I believe, that you
started the
formed your company.
yeah. Well, I went there, I had toured a solo dance concert called Second Take before I left the States. And I was dancing there, and I really was very unhappy dancing alone. I mean, it's, you know, I really was not into the glory of being this solo artist. It was just that it was the only thing I could think of doing at the time. And it was cheap, and it was easy to tour, and it was less hassle that you don't have to babysit and things like this. And
wardrobe's relatively small.
no, actually it wasn't.
A lot of
well, I mean,
changes?
comparatively, yes,
Yeah, you
but
didn't
I
have
had a lot of changes, yeah.
A core there you
right,
had to dress
exactly,
up.
exactly. And so it's just myself and a lighting designer, and we would travel.
Wow.
And I got tired of doing that, and I remember talking to a woman when I first got to Sweden after I had done the solo concert in a couple of places, and she said, oh, I know someone who can do your work. So I got on the phone calling a dancer who I had absolutely no idea who it was or anything. Turns out it was one of the top dancers in Sweden.
Interesting.
And he said, yeah, I'd love to do your work. And so these people started coming to do my work. And finally someone said, well, what are you going to call this? And I said, oh, I don't know, somebody make up something. And somebody else made up this name, Corning Dances and Company.
I wonder where they got the name.
Gee, I don't know.
That's
It's,
great.
Interesting.
Now, where do you find dancers? Now, obviously, here you are back in the States, and yet you, just before we taped, you flew in recently from
Sweden,
Europe.
yeah.
Who do you dance with? Where do you find the dancers to do your work?
Well, I have a very beautiful dancer whose name is Heather Brady, who was a student of mine when I taught at the University of Iowa. And she did a lot of my work while I was there as a student. Although I had my professional company coming in to do professional works, Heather performed as a student in a lot of the student choreography I made there. And then she graduated, and she sort of hung out for a year, and I sort of took her, places. And finally I said, look, I'm moving up to Minneapolis. Do you want to come?
Okay.
And so she said yes, and she sort of took, it's a risk,
Well,
to
sure,
do
for
that.
both sides, I would
Right,
think. Sure.
right, exactly. And I had a dancer, Ron Fowler, who danced with me for 6 years. And when I came here, I decided, and there were some other dancers who were coming in, and I also I knew that there were a lot of dancers here. So I got some very beautiful dancers.
What was it that made you decide to come to Minneapolis? I mean, were you just carrying on the Swedish theme, or I mean, why did you
It's
want
very
to come
funny. Actually, I told some Swedish friends of mine that you could buy Kalles caviar here in stores, which is this. No American would know what to do with this,
Right.
So obviously there's enough of a Swedish community here to know what to do with this. Basically, no. I looked around a lot in terms of relocating. I got some invitations to move to places, and after doing some research, I felt very strongly that Minneapolis is a very strong supportive arts town, and I'm very interested in the theater community here. The dance community holds a very special place in the national eye, in that there are many independent artists, dancers here.
Right, there's been a lot of support over the years from the Independent Choreographers Alliance, which is now the Dance Alliance, movement artists of all sorts.
Right.
So what you're saying, I think, is that it was sort of the infrastructure was here, the community, the resources, to allow you to come in and express what you wanted
Exactly.
to do.
And I think that that is a very important point that I think the public needs to know that needs to be supported because it does have a national interest. And because of the economic system, which is really breaking down all over the world, this is not just America in terms of the arts particularly, that the community needs to know that, you know, if everybody sent in $10 to a dance company, you know, it would lessen the load.
Sure it would.
But most people don't realize that. You know, oh, I don't have $50 or $100 or,
Right.
you know.
And they feel maybe if they go and they buy the ticket for the performance, that's one way, but
Right,
it takes more than that.
Whoa, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more than that.
A lot
I
more
want
than
to talk a little bit about your dance as well, but you touched on something that as long as I've got you here, I wanted to ask you about. Venues. Do we have good spaces for someone like
Fabulous spaces.
you?
Fabulous
What do you
spaces.
like here in the Minneapolis area? Where do you like to dance? I know you've done things at 6A.
Right, 6A. In April, we're going to be doing a very special performance in 6A where we're taking away everything in there. And it exposes a phenomenal space. I mean, it's got huge columns that go up to the ceiling, and it's there's windowsills that sort of look out and that are over your head, and there's a small little theater behind the what we call a cyclorama, which is, you know, sort of the space in the back.
Just let me interject here that we're talking about Studio 6A in the Hennepin Center for the Arts.
That's correct.
Downtown Minneapolis.
That's correct.
Right.
And I mean, there's a Southern Theater, which, you know, hopefully, hello Jeff Bartlett, that we're going to be performing, and that is magical. And for me, I'm very interested in not just proscenium or set stages, but also bringing things to alternative performing spaces, the Landmark Center. I mean, there's buildings. I mean, you know.
Lots of places, and you're not afraid to go to some non-traditional spaces.
Oh,
it
without
sounds
a
like.
doubt, yeah.
That's
without
great.
a doubt.
Let's talk a little bit about more about what it is you want to say in your dance. And you told me before we started sitting down here that you're going to be taking some risks with your project in April.
Yeah. I have been very schooled in sort of linear art, meaning there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and every movement, there's no superfluous movement. You don't just sort of go out and down. I don't make abstract work. And I've always been very interested in the miscommunication of human beings, particularly between the sexes. And sort of researching the fact that, you know, men really do come from Mars and women really do come from Venus, and although we sort of are on different planets.
And we negotiated Earth as a meeting ground or something.
Yeah, it's a great book, actually. It's a great premise for a book. But, so this new work is really, I'm trying very hard not to be linear. I'm using the vehicle of being in a dream. That, for instance, when you have a nightmare, when you tell someone about a nightmare, you vividly remember really strong images, and then you sort of say, and then something else happened, and then this door opened, and I don't remember what came out, but this door opened, and somehow I walked in. And when you relate nightmares, they're not frightening when you relate them.
Sounds fun. And you mentioned you can try some technical things too. I know you don't want to give away everything, but
there's some.
You're going to be using the space a little bit differently.
The space a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, even the hallways, up through the audiences. No, you don't have to get involved as an audience member.
That can be scary for some of these reserved Minnesotans.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
As an audience member, I'm going to be entertained.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
We've got a couple more minutes. I want to talk about some things, but for the April event at Studio 6A, there's a phone number people can call,
Right,
and what is
right.
that?
825-4509.
And that's
for tickets and reservations.
Sounds good. Okay, we'll get that on the screen as
Right.
well. So, the state of dance, you sound pretty positive about it. What are some of the cycles in dance? I mean, are we in another high mark, or are
No,
we
we're in,
in
well,
a tough
we're sort of-
situation?
we're in a tough situation.
Yeah?
I think the situation with dance is a very difficult one because of the economics. Companies are folding all over the world, all over the United States. Studios are shutting down. There's no money. And the arts do depend on private, foundation, and government help, support. We cannot do this from ticket income. Very, very tiny, minuscule productions cost $12,000 and up, with people being paid nothing.
Right, that's not going into the performers or the choreographers' pockets.
And exactly.
Right.
And you can maybe make $3,000 at the door.
Wow. Quick question before we go. Does this partly drive your travel? Because I know you're going back to
Yes.
Europe.
Yeah.
In fact, you have an exciting project coming up
Yeah,
there.
I'm going to work on a major motion picture film,
Yeah.
The Rake's Progress.
Excellent.
Stravinsky. Yeah, it's exciting. I
No.
don't know what the hell I'm doing, but it's going to be
Well,
very exciting.
You will when you get there. And who are you working with? You mentioned some
Inge
names.
Obi is the film director. Barbara Hendricks is the lead singer. Esa-Pekka Salonen is the conductor. So we're talking, and Beth Corning.
And Beth Corning. Great. So if people want to get a preview of maybe not that specific work, but the nature, what you have to say, come on down to Hennepin Center.
Yeah, I mean, this won't be quite anything to do with opera, but the work that I try to do is accessible, that you should not sit there and go, hello, Harry, what's this?
Well, Beth, best of luck to you here
you very
and there.
much.
Thanks for coming on to the show.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Great. And we'll be back in a moment with Lendre Kearns from the Guthrie Theater. But first, please take a look at our events calendar that we're going to put up on the screen. And we're back, and I'm very happy to have with us on this part of the show a guest, somebody that I've worked with in a number of projects, Lendre Kearns, the communications director at the Guthrie Theater, or director of lots of stuff, I guess. So
that's a good title.
Thanks for being on the show. Let's get some of that out of the way, and then I want to talk about stories. I want to hear some of the stories about your life in the arts. Communications director at the Guthrie, what do you do?
Well, my set of responsibilities is quite varied. They include the ticket office, the gift shop, the bars and food service, the ushering staff, the volunteer program, the concert programs, the special events,
right?
The public relations, publications, marketing, and general communications.
Page 2?
I think.
That's great.
I think. That pretty well covers it.
And I met you, I think the first time was on a neighborhood-based project. The Guthrie has made, and the Walker across your lobby there, have made great contributions into the surrounding neighborhoods there.
We're really excited about working with the neighborhood, and this has been, the Loring Park neighborhood has been going through the neighborhood revitalization process.
That's right.
And we were delighted that even though we're officially on the wrong side of the tracks for Loring Park neighborhood, we're exactly on, it ends in the middle of the street upon which we live, that they invite us to be able to participate with them in the planning process and look for ways that we can better serve our immediate neighborhood as a community. Mm-hmm. It's very exciting. The opening of the sculpture garden a few years ago has made a real sort of change in, I think, the feeling of our sort of whole block. And with the ice rink and all that, there's a real sense of campus and neighborhood, and it's a very strong tourist attraction, particularly in the summer.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to sort of collaborate with the neighborhood and help deal with some of their concerns and be a partner in hoping to solve some of the problems that our neighborhoods have.
And I think you've been doing a great job on that. I like to tell people that that area, the Loring Park area, between your institution and over towards the orchestra, more people go to art events there in that particular part of town than any neighborhood between Chicago and the West Coast.
It's fabulous.
Full of stuff going on there.
And such a wide range of work, from the Guthrie to the kinds of events that the Walker does and the exhibits at the Walker, but through things like Red Eye Collaborative, who's one of my very fave companies, and Jason McLean's Loring Theater, which is another wonderful company, and then you've got the theater where the cricket used to be that's now the Music Box.
Right.
There's a real range of work in that area.
Theater 1900s up there, and a couple of
absolutely
art galleries, I think.
Yeah, tons and tons of interesting work.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a nice neighborhood.
So you wear many hats over there.
I wear many hats. But my most important hat is communicating with the audience.
With the audience, okay.
My job is to be, to prepare, my true responsibility is to prepare the audience to have a set of expectations for a performance coming up that will enable them to be able to enjoy it. So, in simplest terms, it's if you go to a movie and you thought it was a comedy and you find out it's a horror film, you're not going to probably enjoy the experience.
That's right, and you might
Because
think
it's not
twice
the set of expectations you
about
have.
going back if...
Right.
Yeah.
So what we try to do in terms of our communications programs through publications is give the audience as much information as they want so they can prepare for the performances. So through our education program, and Sheila Livingston is our education coordinator, we have 70-page study guides with background material on the play that are incredibly extensive. Publications like The Preview that provide a lighter sort of background. We have audio study guides, in fact, so you can borrow them and flip them into your car radio
While you're
and
driving.
listen to them on the way to work, you know, or
That's
on the way to the
great.
theater at night.
Sure.
So we, through all of our communications programs, try to ensure that the audience has a framework in which to appreciate and evaluate the work.
Well,
that they
you're
see.
obviously enthusiastic about what you do, and I'm sure that Guthrie appreciates all the good work you do. How did you end up doing this? What got you that particular job in this institution?
Well, you know, it was really funny. I was lying in the middle of a wheat field one day, and I looked up and I said, oh my God, when I grow up, I want to be a communications director. Not true, but it's a thought, you know. I actually, I grew up, I'm Canadian, and I grew up in Winnipeg, which is just due north of here, and became very interested in theater actually when I was in elementary school. And I had a junior high teacher who convinced my mother that she really only had two choices. One was to enroll me in theater school or let me become the juvenile delinquent that I was bound to be.
Okay.
So that she had to channel my energy somewhere. So I got involved in theater school at a young age and had in my teens, I hosted a radio show. I worked a lot in broadcasting, in fact. Worked as an actress.
Okay,
in
so
my
you've had
late
experience
teens in
on the boards
dance.
as well.
Yeah, on that side of the fence. And it didn't take me long to realize that I was everything an actress should never be.
Oh.
I liked the process more than the product. The rehearsal was much more interesting to me than the performance. And so that meant that it was a nice thing to be a part of my life, but it wasn't where I belonged. And I, at that point, actually decided, it was quite inadvertent, I decided I would get serious about this broadcasting stuff I'd been doing for 3 or 4 years and would go to Ryerson Polytech in Toronto and take the broadcasting course there. And I was accepted into the course, and it was like I had 5 months to sort of make cash and help to pay my tuition before it started. And some friends of mine had just taken over the regional theater in town, and they said, we're really stuck, why don't you come and work with us? So I started working at this regional theater, originally as the assistant to the artistic director, and fell in love with the idea of being a partner to the audience. And so moved over to the communications side about 6 months later and didn't look back, and that was 21 years ago.
Wow.
So,
And since then, you told me that you've toured and taken troops in different disciplines. I mean,
yeah, I've worked in
dance,
many.
theater,
Yeah.
rock and roll?
yeah, rock and roll. Theater's
Yeah.
my first love,
Yeah.
and I worked in theater almost nonstop for about 5 or 6 years. And then in the last bit of that, I started also doing some freelance work, and I worked with a talent agency out of Vancouver, British Columbia, and did stuff like, you know, promoted tours of the BJs into, you know, arenas and stuff like that, and Dr. Hook, and sort of all of these early 70s kinds of groups.
Some
And
of us remember these acts.
yeah,
This
I
is
know. I
great.
mean, this is old times, and
Yeah.
and even worked on things like closed circuit boxing in convention centers, and promoted the Moscow Circus and a real sort of variety of stuff. And then I ended up working in classical ballet, which was a great joy, and part of the responsibility, of course, in dance, you tour a lot.
Yeah.
So it took me on many adventures to many different countries with.
And you go
the
with
company.
these companies, or
And ahead of them mostly,
yeah,
more often
kind of
than with
advanced
them.
work.
Yeah, so in and out and back and forth and around the block.
Any outrageous experiences, near misses? What? Let's limit a few of them.
Well, touring is always an interesting challenge because when you go into other countries, you know, rules are different. Countries operate in different ways. And so, for example, when we were performing in Egypt, the ticket curtain time on the ticket said evening.
Evening
Evening.
narrows it down a bit.
Right. Now, our artistic director, of course, wants a show to start at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And
We've got a call, and
yeah, you
some
want
lights
to be
might have to go up.
You got to get the the dancers there, and they have to be prepared. But in Egypt, the idea of the performance starting is when everyone gets there, and that's evening.
Okay.
So, the performance wasn't going to start till 9:15 at night. And this, made the artistic director more than a little ballistic, needless to say. But Egypt was just one story after another, after another, after another. Fabulous. The theater there is actually it's like a real theater, but the roof is a tent. It's not a building. And the building that includes many other residents, cats, snakes,
You're not talking about Broadway shows. You're talking about the critter.
Yeah, the critters
cats
live
and
in the theater.
Lizards in the theater.
And so the stage manager, for example, one night, I think it was opening night, he's calling the show, and he keeps sort of stomping his foot on the floor. And he's just standing there, and he's, giving his cues, and he keeps stomping his foot. And then he stomp again. And I finally went over and said to him, Blaine, what are you doing? And he said, don't tell. I said, well, what are you doing? He said, snakes. And the snake kept poking his nose out of a hole in the floor, so that every time he poked his nose out of the floor, he'd give a stamp to send him back down.
Back where he came from.
Again, because he didn't want the dancers to know that they were, that entrances from stage left.
Suddenly there was this flamenco dance going on off stage, some kind of footwork going on there.
It was hysterical. And that was the same night, actually. The opening piece on the program was a Balanchine piece, and it has a lovely little, quite quiet pas de deux, and then all of a sudden all the corps come, crashing in big jetés out of the wing. And in the middle of the pas de deux, a cat had wandered out on the stage. And
it's like a feral cat, a wild...
Yeah, just like a wild house cat.
Okay.
Just a little cat wandering around the stage while they're dancing, and it's just sort of wandering. Well, then the moment that the dancers did their little bow and left the stage, and all of a sudden the corps de ballet comes racing out of the wings in these huge, big jumps, scared this little cat to death, who went flying off the stage and landed, this is no joke, in the lap of Madame Mubarak.
Oh, great.
And of course, at this point, she jumps, and you hear 8 machine guns click into place, because they don't know what's happened. I mean, the guards haven't been watching. The next thing you know, Madame Mubarak has done this huge jump. It was just because they don't know if
she thought this could be a loaded cat, and
she just startled her. But the guards didn't see the cat, so they thought she was startled because somebody was trying to shoot her or attack her or something. So the next
Ford
thing
theater all over.
Oh, it was hysterical.
Amazing. So the point of machine guns has been, how could you leave all that fun and come here to the middle of the continent, to the great wheat fields of the Midwest? What brought you to the Guthrie?
After 8 years of touring.
Yeah, you'd had enough.
The Guthrie is one of the most truly extraordinary arts organizations in North America, and I can say that with a sense of pride, being a part of this organization. But also, it was a very attractive place for me to come for that reason. Garland and Ed, Garland Wright, who's the artistic director, and Ed Martinson invited me to join them and undertake the communications program at the end of their first year of leadership, and it was an exciting opportunity for me. Because the Guthrie as an institution hasn't forgotten that at the very heart of it are artists and audiences. A lot of the very big theaters, and I have a lot of experience in very large institutions, a lot of the big theaters have forgotten that audiences are people. Mm-hmm. That they sort of have this rhythm and this momentum of their own. And it's not that they're commercial undertakings, but they sort of mask themselves with sort of a commercial air to them.
And they get caught up in the requirements of the bottom line.
And being safe and being, being artistically very conservative, being very, very safe. Mm-hmm. And the Guthrie, from its very beginning, has been a shining example of what a theater can be. And it continues to do that. Mm-hmm. It's support of the artist. The actor is the central artist of the theater. We're one of the only companies that still has an acting company, where instead of just jobbing in actors for 5 weeks and sending them back out the door, we have a number of members of our company that work a full season contract, so they can be human beings. Imagine, they can have a house.
They can live somewhere.
They can live somewhere.
Join our community.
They can join the community. They can participate in the church. They can work for, they can help raise money for other charities.
So this is a great civilizing influence here.
And it's an extraordinary opportunity to be able to create an environment where an artist can succeed. Yeah. And we provide a lot of other support for actors too, like with vocal coaches and movement coaches. We have ongoing workshop programs. Mm-hmm. So as artists, they have an opportunity not just to practice their craft, but to constantly improve their craft. And that's not many theaters who are willing to make that commitment. On the other side of the fence, I think the theater makes a huge commitment to its audience in terms of the amount of energy that goes into providing them with material to appreciate and evaluate the performances, to a real sense of caring and community sharing. And it's a theater that listens to its audience.
Which is a big part
about what its
of what you do. We've only got about a moment left. I don't want to overlook this
Dream on
wonderful
Monkey
poster.
Mountain.
And that's
It is.
closing, what, about halfway through this
It
month?
closes in the middle of the month. It closes on March 12th. It's an extraordinary production. We're very thrilled to have this in the theater. Bill T. Jones, who is the artistic director of the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company, is directing the production. There are members of his company that are in the production as well. So it's a fascinating combination of dance and poetry and music. And a very provocative play. Dream on Monkey Mountain is written by Derek Walcott, of course, who won the Nobel Prize for Literature last year for his poetry. And it's an extraordinary theatrical experience. It's very stunning. And we're delighted to welcome Bill into the Guthrie roster of artists. And,
Well, that's great.
And provide a platform for him to explore this really interesting work.
Lendre, thanks. I want to have you back on and hear more stories. I really do. And
There
I
are
hope people,
thousands.
I hope people get a chance to come and see this show at the Guthrie.
Indeed.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Glad to have you on. And we'll be back in a moment with some friends and some colleagues from Very Special Arts Minnesota. But first, we're going to take a look at two public service announcements created for the Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board in cooperation with the Minnesota Association of Independent Commercial Producers.
I pledge that in all my interactions with young people,
I will treat them with respect
and affirm their dignity
and their value to our community.
You can change what it means to grow up in our city, one relationship at a time. Take the pledge and give it some life. For more information or a copy of the pledge, call the Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board, 673-2060.
I pledge
that in all my
Interactions
with young people,
I will treat them with respect.
with respect, affirm their dignity, and will affirm their dignity and
Value
to our community.
our community.
You can change what it means to grow up in our city, one relationship at a time. Take the pledge, give it some life. For more information or a copy of the pledge, call the Minneapolis Youth Coordinating Board, 673-2060.
And we're back. And I'm very pleased to have as guests in this segment of Artifacts, Jaehn Chelberg, who's an artist, Craig Dunn, who's the executive director at Very Special Arts Minnesota, and Jane Clare, who is a performing artist, and she's with Open Door Theater. So thank you all for joining us. And besides just having you on to talk with you, one of the reasons we wanted to get you on right now is you all and others are heading out to a very important international event. And Craig, maybe you could just set the stage for us a little bit. What's going on?
Sure. This, we're going to be heading off to Brussels, Belgium, right at the beginning of May for the International Very Special Arts Festival. And this festival is held every 5 years. The last one I was lucky to be part of. It was held in Washington, D.C., mostly right at the Kennedy Center for the Arts. And this one will be, for various reasons, it's being held overseas, and we're very excited. I get to go along with the other people that are here and a number of other people from Minnesota, and we'll be there with about 1,000 people from around the world. People with disabilities, people without disabilities, in all of the arts, sharing performances, sharing their visual arts, and we're just very excited about going.
But maybe before we talk about some of the artwork itself, you could give us just a quick outline of what Very Special Arts is, and obviously the Minnesota, chapter or?
Pretty much every state and a number of countries have Very Special Arts. It's an organization that was originally founded by Gene Kennedy Smith of the Kennedy family. And basically it provides opportunities in the arts for people with disabilities. And different states have different tacks on how they go about it. But Minnesota mainly makes the arts accessible through providing referrals and providing opportunities to other agencies that provide arts programming to people with disabilities.
So Very Special Arts Minnesota is essentially a service organization, headquartered where?
Hennepin Center for the Arts, downtown Minneapolis.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on. Jaehn, you were nice enough to bring with you here for our show a piece of your artwork, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about what we see here in front of us and how you got involved in doing the art.
Sure. This is one of my pieces that's going to Belgium, and it's called Birth. And it's actually a piece that I created at the University Studio Arts department last winter in a ceramics course. The actual assignment that we were working on was to create a narrative, something that told a story from your life or actual experience. And I'm not much into creating vessels, teapots, or vases. So I usually turn most of the ceramics class into a sculpture class for myself anyways.
Right.
So this piece is kind of reflecting my personal emotional experience of my birth.
Wow.
And a lot of it is kind of the internalized stigma related to being born into the world of birth defects. And some of the impressions that I have had as growing up with disabilities and hearing about what my family members reacted to and how society reacts to disability. So that's why you see in the piece, it's the back piece here is a mother and giving birth to the child, and you see the piece is very broken, jagged, and very much separate. They're two separate pieces. The whole thing is to kind of indicate all the pain and some of the anguish and kind of how things just went wrong and things just weren't right. You know, so the mother's broken, the child is broken. The child is being born onto a bed of tears. That's the birth fluid.
Oh my.
And then the
That'd be
background
this in here,
around
yeah.
is the birth sheet then. And actually the sheet is actually the bag in which the sculpture was stored while it was being made.
Okay.
So it really is kind of, it really is truly a birth sheet.
It is.
Yeah.
How does this particular piece relate to other things that you do? Is there a sort of a thematic story behind what you do, or do you work in different idioms?
Well, most of my work is related to disability experience. Not all of it is quite as heavy as this piece. This piece is pretty loaded as far as emotionally, and some of more the what we traditionally think of as negative emotions, some of the pain and anguish and internalized almost phobia about disability. But a lot of my pieces are very celebratory. Another piece that's going with the Belgium is called Canine Companion, cane being spelled C-A-N-E. It is a seeing eye dog that's been constructed primarily out of white canes, and then also other bits and pieces of blind paraphernalia. So a slate and stylus, some cassette tapes, some other things like that. And so it's, you know, most of my work, like I said, is disability related, but it kind of ranges in the spectrum. Mostly it's about affirming the experience of disability.
Well, it's a nice piece, and as you said, this is a powerful piece. Thank you for sharing it here.
Sure.
Maybe we can talk in a minute or two about some more art, and I know there's at least another visual artist going, Craig. But let's turn to Jaehn here. You are a performing artist, and you're part of, and I think maybe a guiding light with the Open Door Theater.
I'm one of the co-founders of Open Door Theater, and what is it that you want to know?
Well, what is Open Door Theater? Where can people come see it? And kind of a leading question, I know you're involved with some fundraising efforts later this month with an Open Door Theater project.
Right. Open Door Theater is a kind of a grassroots organization at this point that got started out of a sense of frustration on the part of myself and other performers I know with disabilities. We sometimes have a very difficult time getting cast in legitimate theater or standard theater. And I got a phone call one day from a woman named Margot Imdick at the Minnesota Council on Disabilities. This was in the fall of '92. And she was looking for someone to provide an entertainment, a lunchtime entertainment, at a conference on the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we talked about various theater companies around town, and she was like, no, I don't want them, no, what else, who else?
So she was calling you for some advice at this point.
Right, and I said, well, gosh, Margot, that's about all I can think of unless, you know, I could put together a half-hour one-woman show or something for you. And she said, that's what I wanted to hear, Jaehn, do it.
All right.
Excuse me. So at that point, I got terrified about the idea of doing a one-woman show. And I called up a couple of people that I know, Joy Mincy Powell and Kirk Mattson, both of whom have disabilities and both of whom have some experience and some very passionate interest in theater. Asked them if they'd like to get involved. They did. We developed a half-hour show. We did it. It was very well received. And all the rest of the winter of '92, '93, we got phone calls about, oh, you know that half-hour thing you did at the conference? Can you come and do that for us? We're having a conference or this, that, or the other. And it just took on a life of its own and kind of snowballed unexpectedly. And then a friend of mine, Brian Shaughnessy, returned from Hawaii where he winters. I should be so lucky to live that lifestyle.
This is a friend of yours, so you might want to...
And Brian, I knew at the University of Minnesota when I was a student there in the theater department. And Brian has, since I first met him, become disabled. And we had always said, oh, we should do a show together. So he got back to Minnesota and became involved as a director for us. And this little half-hour show grew into a full-length performance that we did at the Southern Theater in August of '93 called For Gimps Who've Considered Homicide When Enough is Enough. And that show was very well received as well. And in the process of putting that show together, we learned of the International Festival through VSA, submitted a proposal, and were chosen. So now we're in the process of developing a show, a 20-minute piece, to take to Brussels, something original, something distinctive, something powerful, something funny and moving. And on the 31st of this month at the Guthrie Theater, we will be sharing the show that we're taking to Brussels with the Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, and the Minnesota community, so that Minnesota has a chance to see how we will represent the state of Minnesota, the theatrical community of the Twin Cities,
So
and
obviously
the disabled community.
open to the public.
Yes.
And some proceeds are going to help you get over there? Is that
Yes,
part of the
it's
reason?
a benefit performance. The Guthrie has been absolutely wonderful in supporting this project. They first hosted a news event in late December of '93 to help us get the word out. And they're providing us with a space. Tickets are $15. Most of the proceeds will go to helping finance the trip to Brussels. We're taking a rather large group with us because we want to leave an impact, of course, on the conference. And if people are interested in attending the performance, they can call the Guthrie for tickets. If they'd like to know more about Open Door Theater, they can call our managing director, Lynn Eklund, at 333-LYNN, L-Y-N-N, which is 333-5966. And Lynn can talk with them, send them more information, and give them info about where they can see other performances.
It's like your name wasn't
as well.
Priscilla. That would be
That would be terrible. Yes, it would be. Working up to the Guthrie performance, we'll be doing some smaller performances around town. We're still getting those query calls of, can you guys come and do your show
Well, it sounds like you stepped up and kind of filled a void that was out there, and I give you congratulations. That's great.
There's another place where we'll be able to see Open Door in addition to some of Jaehn's work and actually all of the people that submitted applications from Minnesota to go to the festival, which we had 31 applications from around the state. We're having an international showcase, we're calling it, at Landmark Center on April 2nd, which is the Saturday before Easter, and we'll be there all day highlighting people with disabilities, visual arts, performing arts, music, and we'll be there all day, and it's open to the public and free.
Great.
And so we invite people to come there to Landmark Center.
And speaking of the other artists, I know you brought some images by
Jaehn Garris, who lives in St. Paul. These are not the pieces that will be shown in Brussels. However, they're very representative of what Jaehn does. Very stark, very vibrant work, and the panel of judges in Brussels were very impressed with all of our entries' work, and that's why we were lucky to have 3 actual entries chosen. So those are just representative pieces of Jaehn's. And Jaehn is a woman who lives with schizophrenia and is also in recovery with a chemical dependency problem.
So it sounds like an entourage from Minnesota areas going, other folks from the rest of the U.S. all heading over. Now, are you representing the U.S. as a sort of a mega contingent, or will each state be represented separately?
Each state is represented. I think they will have representatives from 42 states and from, if I can see, nope, I can't quite see, 47 countries. So it's quite a number, and we've got a little larger contingent than, say, some of the other states, but maybe we have a little more to show off. So.
There are also at least 2 or 3 contingencies that will be larger than ours.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I suppose, maybe other larger states or something like that.
And some just have I think Virginia is taking 70 children as part of a performing group.
What are they doing, the Nutcracker or something?
I really don't know, but they have a major fundraising effort on their hands.
And the responsibility for raising this money comes, out of Very Special Arts and the individual participants?
Each state has 5 supported delegates, both for airfare and for room and board once we're there. The Very Special Arts National Organization picks up the room and board. So some of it will have to be private fundraising to get some additional delegates there.
You know, we could talk more about some of these background things, but I wanted to ask Jaehn if you would share with us a reading that you said you were going to do, a short piece.
Sure. This is a piece written by a woman named Jaehn Stewart, and it's called Passing. "You don't seem handicapped," she said. "You seem like an ordinary person who just happens to be sitting in a chair with wheels instead of legs. You look like any minute you'll just get up and walk away from it, like you just sat down in it for a moment's leisure in your busy day. You look like being handicapped is just one part of you, like being blonde. You look like you have better things to do with your life than sit around in a wheelchair feeling sorry for yourself, like someone who eats eggs and toast in the morning, not intravenous protein. You look mainstream. You look cool. Your body looks whole and your mind. You don't drool, jerk, or twitch. You don't embarrass us or make us feel guilty. If you sat in a regular chair, you could pass."
Thank you. Thanks. In the minute we've got left, I just wanted to ask a little question with probably big answers, and we're not going to do it justice. Other than the good work that Very Special Arts does here in Minnesota, what is the support for the artwork you do? Jaehn, do you want to? Is it hard to find places to show your work or to get the classes you want to take?
Well, I think it's hard to get taken seriously. You know, this sculpture and other sculptures are referred to by most of the world as visual arts. I walked in the studio arts department to take my first course there at the University of Minnesota, and they said, "This is a visual arts department, you're not going to survive here." And so it's hard to get taken seriously and have the opportunities to learn about art and how to create it, and let alone show it and display it.
Are there different issues from the visual arts to the performing arts?
I think there may be some different issues in that visual arts, often you're working in isolation. It's one person with their medium. And in the performing arts, it's usually a collaboration and a cooperation. The biggest issue is that I encounter is this myth that disabled people should not be seen in public, and that being disabled is something to be ashamed of rather than celebrating our uniquenesses. So that's what we fight, is other people's attitudes and assumptions about what we can and cannot do.
Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. Best of luck in Brussels.
Thank you.
Look
Thanks for
forward to
having
getting
us,
some
Phil.
documentation when
We'll
you come
let you
back.
know.
You bet.
Okay. And in just a moment, we're going to have Janet come back and talk about the fabulous prize we're going to have. But first, let's take a look at the question. If you answer it, you get a fabulous prize. Now, the third and fourth callers with the right answer to the arts question will receive 2 free tickets to their movie of choice at the Rivertown International Film Festival, which begins on April 22nd.
The U Film Society screens over 80 films from some 35 countries for the festival, and there is so much to see and choose from. It really is a great film event for the Twin Cities. And again, if you're the third or fourth caller with the right answer to the question, you'll get to see a Rivertown film for free. And by the way, on the April Artifact Show, I'll be interviewing Joel Shepard from UFilm, and we'll bring you the scoop on Rivertown.
And I'm excited because I'm going to have some guests on to talk about the slams, the jams, and the cabarets, all of which are opening up new venues and bringing new emerging performers to the public eye here in the Minneapolis area. Now, if you've seen anything on this particular show of Artifacts that you have questions about, or if you've got ideas about some things that you'd like to see us talk about on the show, give us a call at the City Cable 34 hotline, 673-2234. We'd love to answer your questions. We'll see you next time. I'm Phill Lindsay.
And I'm Janet Zahn. Thank you for watching.
Now, could I get one of these maybe?
No.
Just one? I don't know, two.
You can't even look at them.
Can I just
No.
Just,
Not even. These are for our viewers. No. Nope. This is...